Sup guys, it's Radmore for Life here. Today I want to talk about context in debating. Now first let's get over what I mean by debating. I'm talking about a debate between two fictional characters who would win in a fight. So basically like when you go to Death Battle's website and you see their fights between, Marvel or DC characters or Dragon Ball characters or whatever, that's what I'm talking about. And this is kind of a big community. There's a lot of people who like to debate who would win in a fight, and we do it for fun. But it is important that if you're gonna do it, you have to do it right. And there's a lot of things that comes in a debate, and a lot of things that comes to who would win in a fight. And there's a whole laundry list of things that people talk about, like powers, abilities, weaknesses, strengths, mentalities, a bunch of stuff. There's a lot of things going into it. But I think one thing that a lot of people don't really talk about too much when it comes to debating is context. Context to not only a fight, but the context to feats and statements that have been used by people to argue why one character would beat another. Because there's a lot of problems when people talk about feats and statements about certain characters when they don't show context to those feats and statements. What I basically mean is there's a lot of times where people are like, oh, this character is shown to do this or do that, and they show feats up there, and that's nice, but they don't put any context to these feats at all. And a lot of times we as an audience have to look back at it and, do our own research. And I get it, there's nothing wrong with doing your own research, but the problem is the whole point of watching your video is so we could get, explain who would win in a fight. And the fact you're not giving us any context to it kind of makes it hard for us to, believe it or believe you in your word. You know, you should have, I think they should at least put it in the description below what, like if they got feats and statements, where they got it. Put some links to where you got these statements from, so we as an audience could be like, okay, at least now we can do our own research directly without having to, just randomly find it like through a comic book or manga, which is really kind of hard, to be honest. So yeah, the context is important simply for the fact that a lot of times these feats and statements can be misconstrued and can be used to make certain characters look stronger or other characters look weaker. And I'm not saying people who do this are just trying to bullshit or trying to lie to people, but you can definitely do it. And there's been examples that I've seen people doing this. And the biggest debating, channel actually does this quite a lot. There's a reason why there's a ton of debunking videos people have on this channel. And I'm not saying that this channel is always just lying or always just trying to make something up, but a lot of times their information is either incorrect or they don't put enough context to it for us to understand what was happening, and this can lead to being incorrect or just being wrong. And I feel like a lot of us, that's why a lot of people do attack a Death Battle, because Death Battle itself, though it is the biggest and most popular, debating channel, it also does have a lot of problems. There's a ton of videos that they have where they have certain characters where they state they can do this or that, and they don't really put any context to it. They just say they can. Sometimes they don't even show an image. They just say that this is how it works. And now, for me, I'm kind of a skeptic. I don't want to 100% believe whatever anybody says. I want to look at it myself to see if the information that they're telling me is true or not. And there are some instances where they do it, where if you look in more depth, you would find that it's kind of BS. But an example I want to give is, let's say there's a certain character who destroys a planet, and the person try to argue that they're a planet buster because they destroy this planet. I mean, if you see the evidence, then it's blatantly obvious that they did it, right? But the problem with that is, what if that person was able to do it because they got a power boost from an unnatural energy source? Let's say, because this happens in comic books a lot, where there's characters who get random power boosts, but it only happens for like one issue and you never see it again. So it's hard to say, well, that's their normal power. No, it's not. It's a power amp that they got. It could be from some energy that they absorb that allowed them to release this. There's a comic book with the Green Lantern in particular where he destroys a planet, and somebody tried to show like, oh, he can destroy a planet, but one of the people in the comments said, well, technically he only did this because he got hit with this energy that he absorbed and he released that out. That gave him the power boost. And the guy was like, yeah, that's true, but he still destroyed a planet. But that's not the point. We're talking about how if he can do that naturally. He could not. He had to get this power boost to do so. So the person was kind of spreading misinformation about it. And ScrewTac does do this a lot. I'm going to pick out one video in particular where I saw this happen quite a bit. And I'm not trying to attack ScrewTac again, or I'm also not trying to say this character would beat that character, or oh, this shouldn't have been the outcome. I'm just trying to say that these certain feats and statements that they used were basically out of context and kind of BS. So I want to talk. The one I'm talking about is the first Goku versus Superman video, and once again, I want to reiterate that I'm not trying to say that Goku would win or they're wrong in the video. I'm just trying to point out parts where they did take context out. The first one that I want to talk about is the 50 Suns thing. There was an issue where Superman was fighting a Sun Eater. He, I think, destroyed it and it was going to blow up. And when it was exploding, it was going to explode with all the stars that it ate. And it ate basically like 50 red giants, and it was going to explode into like a supernova. So it was like the power of 50 suns. So 50 supernovas. Superman tried to fly out of there to get out of like, getting hit with it. But in the end, he did get hit and got knocked out. But he did survive. And ScrewTac used this to say, well, see, technically, he survived 50 supernovas. But if you look at the actual comic book issue, it's in itself, it discredits it. There's a bubble or a text below it that basically gives us more information on why that's incorrect. It's from his father, Jonathan Kent, his human father, not his Kryptonian father. So he basically states that that my boy Clark would be disintegrated if he's touched by the radiation that's leading behind him. Luckily for him that day, that wasn't the case. So basically he was saying that Superman wasn't fast enough to get out of there, and if he was touched by the radiation, he would have been incinerated. He even says that he would have been incinerated. He knows it. So he would have been incinerated if he didn't fly out of there. And the thing that he got hit by was actually the shockwave. The way explosions work is there's different layers to it, and the closest part, the center, is the I forgot what it's called, but it's basically like the detonation center. It's basically the center where it has the most destructive power, and the further you go out of it, the less the destructive power becomes. And if you get to a certain point, you will feel the shockwave. The shockwave in an explosion can still be very powerful enough to blow out, glass and stuff. So shockwaves are still very powerful, but it's a fraction of the explosion itself if you were in the center. And the further it goes out, the more, not only does the energy dissipate, but it also depends on the surface area that it's hitting. So if it's somebody that's smaller, they'll get hit with a less amount of energy than somebody who's bigger, because it has more surface to connect with. And especially if you have your arm spread out, it would basically have empty space to flow through, like your arm right here, the sides of your head right here. It would just touch the part of your body that's getting hit. So it'll be a fraction of what the explosion could do. So technically, Superman, he was only hit by the shockwave of the explosion, not the explosion itself. So it minimizes the destructive power quite a bit. And even his own father said that he would have been disintegrated. And if he wasn't for his speed, he would have been so lucky and he would have died. And then there's two other instances that are kind of similar, and these ones are more blatantly kind of lying. And it was the one where they're trying to prove that he tanked a supernova, and you see the image and they point an arrow at it. They're saying, Superman tanked it right here. He took this blast of the supernova and survived. But I don't see Superman in there, and for a good reason, because he wasn't there. If you look at the actual image, they kind of cropped it out. If you see the full image that was in the panel of the comic book, you would see that Superman was actually on a planet that was off in the distance away from the explosion. The explosion still did consume the planet itself, but he was in such a far enough distance that he wouldn't be getting hit by the full force of a supernova. So technically, he was not getting hit by the full power of a supernova, just fraction of it, which can still be very powerful, but not to the same extent. And it's even big, but that's not the problem. The problem is the fact that they were pointing at him being in the center when he's on a planet way off to the side. That is completely different. And then another one that they had, an even bigger, dumber incident, was there was a comic book where I think it was Orion versus Darkseid, and basically what happened was Apocalypse and New Genesis collided into each other. They smashed into each other, and they basically pointed at the center saying Superman tanked two giant planets smashing into each other, getting sandwiched in between it. He survived it, and then Orion will start talking trash. But if you actually look in the comic, once again, Superman, you cannot see him in the middle of the center of the planets. That arrow was BS indicator. He was not even there. And once again, it was cropped out. If you see the full image of it, you see down the bottom below, he was not only not hit by the planets, the only thing he was actually hit by was one of the fire pits from Apocalypse. Because Apocalypse has a bunch of holes where it shoots out fire and from like the fire pits itself. And one of the fire pit hit Superman, knocking him unconscious. So no, he did not take a collision of being sandwiched between two planets in a collision of that. He just got hit by one of the fire pits of Apocalypse that knocked him out. Still an impressive feat, but not to the extent that they were saying. And that's why I think context in a fight, especially in feats, is very important. You need to look at the context of how they were able to do this, what led to this, what happened, so you can get a better example of what they can do. And I'm not saying that just because they don't put context in it, that automatically means that the feat that they're showing is a lie. But a lot of times they can do it, and they have done it. So that's also something that people need to take in mind when they see feats. Don't just believe them in face value. Oh, you see, they showed me a panel where this guy said this statement, or the author said right here and there. Like, yeah, that could work, but you should also yourself look into it. What I would do, like when I look at when some shows a comic book or something like that, I want to look at the issue of the comic book itself. I want to go to do a deep dive of that issue that the feat came out of, because I want to see, or statement, because I want to see personally for myself what led up to that. Is there anything more to it that would make discredited, or would it prove that it's valid? Because that's very important to use. So yeah, context is definitely important when it comes to debating, and it's something that a lot of people that do these videos should try to put in there if they're trying to be genuine. And us as viewers, when we watch this stuff, can't just take everything in face value. We have to do our own research. It might be a lot of work, but hey, if you really want to, see if these characters can do it or not, you should do it. If you don't want to, then it's fine, but you can't really argue that this person is right then at that point, because you didn't even check to see if they're telling the truth. You just went with what they said. So it's kind of a slippery slope when it comes to that. But yeah, that's it for this video, and I hope you guys learned something, because debating is very hard, but I feel like there are steps to it that can make it more easier for the viewers itself. So with that being said, that's it for today.